Jigme bunzo jala sorande gongje toban bawra shinjilo, gongje toban bawra shinjilo, gongje toban bawra shinjilo.
The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of eons. I now see it, here to receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning, to liberate all beings, thus generate the supreme bodhicitta.
Martag dungar dagmetang jibi jayi tamkembe semchim chusum kyoa ket. Kyo kirne nyan de la raptan jibi lamla rabjik bam nyan de tup ndishi chan. Damchu pakar la bab makaro sogo chu ji tenid tamba yi tedag ngarnzan lebdog te tabdan sherwe yongzongwe tagbam choglat manzate. Shangchim chogda longtando zaptang tana pansogdang shibi domtana ramzhan shir. Domtan ramzhu shir ndadag zhangzhin zapa dang gyachiv dang ne chiji sha. Darna tangbo churka de shima dagna zikjir ka namka lana zigne vjin tangbo lana tamag ne. Gyamta yi dang semchin zatme dang tse dang chir dang kin dang pansog dan. Chuji wangshing chiwi uditjum dang ngowo mevshirin jiktin gombe tak. Gombo tak, gombe, gombo tak, gombo tak, gombo tak. Gombo tak. Li dang chugdang longshut, li dang chugdang longshut nam dangne damchun zangshir dang semchin kan la pambi shir dangbo damjam tarpshin shir. Sangje nyan na sangwa dang dagbi tigje ramjig shir zamchir kanwa tomba na deyi gane la shopi shir. Kembeng kordam nyangande nisan zanle zhuryu shir tagdab sami tangzan jib dea pansuk dea pasam tsogdan shir dea pasam tsogdan shir jikten nanab shopan jikten chuji gu meda shir chimida jive oneto lan chivdadar jiva mepi shir dima shibi rangzhin di tabagdo ne rabji shir Tagbar tiap meter namki ne tiapla sogbar tapshiro. Tangbo yiner gyabdan gi zikjir kayir tagde neda shima samjir tomba na chuji shkayir tagba neda. Chuji shkayir tagba neda. 今天 我们继续
Today, let us continue with our classes on the Uttaratantra Shastra. Tomorrow and day after, we would not have any classes, and we will resume the class on Uttaratantra Shastra on Saturday at the same time. After today's class, we will start practicing the liturgies for the Mipham Rinpoche's Parinirvana. 109 years. 109 Mipham Rinpoche, in fact, passed into Parinirvana in 1912, so it's been 109 years. To Larungar, in fact, we've always had the Parinirvana ceremony for Mipham Rinpoche. At the beginning, we only had a few people practicing upon this. Every year, on the 29th day of the 4th month of the Tibetan calendar, we would practice the supplication and all the liturgies to supplicate and praise Mipham Rinpoche, to commemorate Mipham Rinpoche's Parinirvana. And it's been for over 40 years, or around 40 years. We will practice with the kind of faith and devotion that is no other than the faith and devotion that Phuntsog Rinpoche has. so that the great compassion as well as wisdom would naturally and spontaneously appear in our own mind stream. If we were to practice the Dharma, then we will naturally be with the Buddha at all times. And if we were to protect the Dharma, then the Dharma would naturally protect us. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas would naturally protect us as well. We've studied that yesterday. When we visualize Mipham Rinpoche and Manjushri and Phuntsok Rinpoche, in fact, we can visualize all of them as no other, that they are indeed inseparable. Last year or a year before, we've made a statue of Phuntsok Rinpoche.
应该不是，是学院当时定的，啊，18年是吧？嗯。
Was back in 2018, and I received a statue of Mipham Rinpoche. This particular one, this one was. This one was offered to me by someone just now, and this particular one was made back in Qing Dynasty. I think many of you are aware that Phuntsok Rinpoche made some statues of Mipham Rinpoche. There are some statues that, for example, were made and instructed as well as consecrated by Phuntsok Rinpoche or with his blessings, and those ones are of great blessings and power, and they are the ones that's on sale online, but those are made later. I'm not sure whether if they are consecrated appropriately or not. Anyhow, if you have any of the images of Phuntsok Rinpoche or of, for example, practice Guru Yoga, there are many kinds of images that you can use, and usually practitioners in the past, they would have at least one little statue or image that is very sacred to them, and they would hold it very dearly and not showing to anyone else. The attire, the clothing and adornment of this particular one is the same as the ones that's made by the other great masters. So I really hope that you can engage in this Dharma assembly or practice to supplicate to the gurus, so that you'll be receiving the very unique blessings from the gurus. So today we're going to have a very short ritual to practice on the supplication to the Guru, and I would like to specifically make a note to those of you specifically bought a large amount of fresh flowers from mainland. Sometimes it's not really necessary. I can see that there are many practitioners, especially female practitioners. I noticed that they would diligently make offering of the fresh flowers or make offerings to the statues. Those are great. The practitioners, the traditional practitioners of Tibet, of the Tibetan practitioners, they in fact don't usually take out their most precious tankas or most precious statues in ordinary days. Rather, they would in fact, they would only use those very special objects on special days. And normally, they would hide their very special tankas and special statues. I think this is probably a better way of engaging in practice, because if you were to look at your most precious ones very often, and then you may get too used to it, and it is no longer going to bring you that kind of special insights and your special faith anymore. So it would be good for you to only look at some of your most precious tankas and statues on very special days. For example, the 8th day of the lunar calendar, and so on and so forth. Back in 70s and 80s, we usually would only bring the tankas, or only set out the tankas on the 30th of the month, or the 30th of the last month of the year. So it's a way of celebrating the new year. And then usually they wouldn't really place it in the shrine hall. Otherwise, the reason behind that is because people won't cherish those sacred objects anymore if you were to see it every day. In India, in various monasteries, whenever they have any Dharma assemblies, they would then display their sacred objects that's very special, such as maybe a tooth relic, or maybe certain special statues and images, tankas. If you were to only exhibit your sacred object once or twice a year, then naturally you would generate lots of faith. For example, I have a little locket, and within locket I have lots of sacred objects in it. I don't really show it to anyone. Otherwise, people would feel that this is very ordinary. So today I will show you this. Not now, but
开玩笑，这样的，这个呢，确实就是这个很重要。我确实有一些很珍贵的唐卡，就是我一般的不会这个。
Indeed, this is really important. I do have some very special tankas. I don't usually display them. Another thing about tanka is that you should roll up the tanka from bottom to the top. Many people would do it the other way around. You shouldn't roll it from top to the bottom. This is not good. Some lay practitioners don't understand this, but it's understandable. But at least I think at least the monastics should understand how to arrange your shrine hall so that it looks very elegant. Elegance is really important. Don't scatter all of the object, big and small, and it's all scattered, and it doesn't look very elegant at all. It doesn't uphold that sense of decency. The monastics, in fact, should display the object of refuge, should display all of those offerings and those images in an appropriate way that would make people to generate faith and happiness. In fact, if the way you arrange your shrine hall in a decent way, in a way that looks magnificent, then it would generate a great merit for yourself. It is not to say that if you were to beautify your shrine hall, you are making the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas happy, therefore you generate the great merit. Rather, it is to say it is a manifestation of your own mind, and in such a way you can generate great merit based on your own faith. Wherever you are, you should arrange the tankas and images in a way that it looks decent. It looks really beautiful. So that's something to address before the class. Today, I think we're going to have a rather very long practice session after, so I'm not going to extend I'm not going to be too explicit at the beginning about it. Now let us continue with the Uttaratantra Shastra. Right now we are currently, previous class, we've already talked about the Nirmanakaya and the 12 deeds of the Supreme Nirmanakaya. Also, we've talked about the different causes which led to the 12 deeds. After studying that from the previous class, today we're going to talk about when and why these 12 deeds would manifest. How about, for example, where, and how about the time? In fact, over here it talks about the, in terms of time, it is all the way between beginningless time to nirvana. The Buddha in front of the beings or the disciples, in fact, would manifest in various ways, such as practice in the ascetic practices, or getting ordained, or practicing in a celibate fashion, and so on. After knowing that, today we're going to study how we're going to study permanence. We're going to, in fact, study how how the Buddha's Nirmanakaya would manifest in various places at various times in front of the various sentient beings. Therefore, such kind of manifestation is of permanent. We should be able to understand the Nirmanakaya of the Buddha in such a way, rather than before you study the sutra, many people would think that the Nirmanakaya of the Buddha, after passing into nirvana, then the Buddha is already gone, and there is no more Buddha in this world. That is not the right way to understand it. Now we're going to study how the Nirmanakaya would gradually guide the disciples. The first group of people is for the ordinary beings. Let's look at the way how the beings are tamed, or the way the Nirmanakaya would tame the ordinary beings. Two different beings of different capacities. In fact, the Buddha would tame them with different Dharma teachings and different methods. Now let's look at the ordinary beings. In fact, for the ordinary beings with the words impermanence, suffering, selfless, and peace, the Buddha, who knows all means, persuades sentient beings to generate awareness within the three realms of existence and fully enter into the state beyond torment and pain. Because the Buddha already understood that all the conditioned Dharma are impermanent, and everything bound up with the pollution, suffering, and all phenomena are devoid of self-entity, and nirvana is the ultimate peace and comfort. So after knowing that, and completely after knowing that completely, then he would give teachings in such a way to the ordinary beings, and then would lead the sentient beings to enter into the studies and the studies of the Hinayana, or of the Theravada traditions, and then would give them teachings in such a way. Therefore, we can see that Theravada is not. We cannot say that Theravada is not worthy in any way, because it is a way to tame beings in a skillful way. As Buddhists, we should contemplate upon impermanence. And contemplation upon impermanence is a great practice. If you were to only understand impermanence in a very literal way, and if it doesn't really provide any benefit or doesn't touch your mind at all, then it would not bring you any practical benefit at all. In fact, impermanence, sometimes we do need to understand it through a very, we do need to study it, and we need to generate understanding from studies. And sometimes we do need to practice upon it and contemplate upon it. According to the Tattva Shastra, where it says that the sentient beings, in fact, only would generate a sense of closeness or aversion based on the benefit. And because of such property or quality of ordinary beings' connection, therefore it is the relationship between people are very impermanent. For example, you would only be nice to people whom you think that would bring you benefit. But for the ones, for example, all of a sudden, if they were to harm you, then the relationship would take a big turn right away. Therefore, I believe Churchill said that there is no ultimate friend and there's no forever friend, nor will there be forever foe. I heard some functionary at a meeting also saying that as well as the practitioners. I really think we need to understand it as well. We need to understand that the mundane beings' relationship and their choices and their, for example, a sense of closeness or aversion is completely based on how much benefit they can receive. Without knowing this, all the relationship and all the social status and all the gains and the losses in this world would not be, you would not be able to understand it and would not be able to accept it. So you have to understand that all of such are impermanent. According to the Buddha Charita, it says that if one were to observe the three realms, it is of impermanent, it is without a master, and because of such kind of suffering is constantly burning and tormenting the sentient beings, how would the wise ones take delight in such kind of three existence? All of our enjoyments, let it be of the high social status, or let it be any kinds of supreme enjoyment, in fact, all of such are impermanent. Let's not hold any hopes for anything within these three realms, within this three existence. For example, your beautiful appearance and your youth and your wealth, all of those would be impermanent. We should understand impermanence. We should understand that everything that is compounded will eventually bring suffering, because such nature is suffering. And then all phenomena are devoid of entity. After knowing all of those, then we need to understand that nirvana is the most supreme in peace and comfort. If we were to really understand the truth of all phenomena in this world, we will enjoy great peace and comfort, and such kind of ease and comfort is called nirvana. The Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, all the ones attained supreme fruition, they understood the true nature of all phenomena. Whatever happens in your life, whatever kind of phenomena happens, if you were to have such kind of understanding, you would not be bothered as much. You would not encounter great suffering. Whatever you have, whatever changes that you may encounter, let it be changes within your family, within anything in your life, really, then you would be able to contemplate in such a way that the great masters and the great teachers and gurus, the omniscient Buddha has already taught that all are impermanent. Therefore, I would not suffer with such great grasping towards permanence. Knowing the teaching of impermanence and contemplating upon it, you will not generate any hopelessness at the time encountering any obstacles. The teachings on the Four Noble Truths, on the Four Seals, in fact, is really important. Knowing this, it will change your mind stream, but without truly taking it into your heart, then you are still separate from the Dharma. Though knowing it, it's not going to make any imprints. These 4 verses are very short, but it is definitely the very condensed and concise teaching by the Buddha. Now, how about the ones following the lesser vehicles? After the ordinary beings have abandoned the causes of torment and suffering, then they enter into this lesser vehicle. Let's look at what they would do. Those who have perfectly followed the path of peace believe that they have attained the state of nirvana. By the White Lotus Sutra and similar aspect of his secret teaching, he explains the nature of phenomena. Thus, he causes them to refrain from their former belief, to fully adopt skillful means and discriminative wisdom, and again maturity on the path of the supreme vehicle. There are, for example, the ones practicing upon the after practicing on the lesser vehicle, then knowing that they've already attained the state of nirvana, the Buddha started giving teachings on the one vehicle teaching by, for example, the White Lotus Sutra, as well as the Sutra of Lion's Roar and many other Mahayana sutras. The Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas would eventually enter into the path of Mahayana. If you remembered from the teachings from Beacon of Certainty, there are various practitioners whom would enter into the Mahayana teaching at different stages. For example, there are the ones entering into Mahayana through the path of joining and path of accumulation and so on. Anyhow, over here it says that the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas after completing the path of peace in the Hinayana path, then they would enter into they would be taught by the means of Mahayana, so that their mind stream can be ripened. And then the Buddha would guide them to eradicate their selfishness in terms of personal enlightenment, and then further lead them into the path of Mahayana by skillful means of generating a supreme bodhicitta. So through these 2 methods, the Buddha would guide them to continuously to accumulate the merits of wisdom and merit, so that they can be matured on the path of Mahayana, and then generating the mind of bodhicitta to liberate all sentient beings. According to the Lotus Sutra, it says the Buddha said that today I will give you the teaching as it is, as the truth. You will not enter into the parinirvana. Within the sutras, you can remember the arhats said that, well, I have already practiced in such a way that is in accordance with the Buddha, then if the Buddha can enter into nirvana, then why can't I enter into the same nirvana as the Buddha? And then the Buddha started giving the teaching as that the city, the nirvana that you have attained is like a temporary refuge place that is in fact just an illusory city. You can see that illusory city as your destination. After reaching here, you'll be able to see that there is then the supreme destination that is ultimate. The teaching given over here means that the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas in fact only attain the kind of illusory fruition of nirvana that is very temporary. They can only attain the supreme fruition, the supreme nirvana as the Buddha once they complete the Mahayana path. Previously, we've also learned that if you It is the verse that said before, if you do not tread on this supreme path, then you will not be able to attain the supreme fruition, just like the ones who are blind cannot see the sun, who cannot look at the sun. The Buddhas of the 10 directions would generate radiance of the 10 directions and generating various sounds to encourage the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas to enter into the path of Mahayana. We should know that certain schools, they only talk about they only talk about the fruition of personal liberation, of individual liberation. But over here, what it means is that if you do not generate the Mahayana bodhicitta, then there is no way for you to attain the supreme Buddhahood, the fruition of such. So over here, it talks about how the lesser vehicle can enter into the Mahayana. And then how about the ones following a great vehicle, the Mahayana? Over here it says that then he grants them prophecy of their supreme enlightenment. The Mahayana path, the ones who's already on the great vehicle, all the way from the first to the 8th bhumi, the Buddha started giving teachings of the various merits and qualities of the bodhisattvas as of such 8 bhumis, and then he also give prophecies to the practitioners of the path of drawing and the path of accumulation, as well as the bodhisattvas of the first bhumi and second bhumi and so on and so forth. The Buddha would tell them what's the name of the pure land that you're going to attain liberation, or rather, excuse me, the kind of pure land the bodhisattvas would have after they attain liberation, and the names of the bodhisattvas after they attain full liberation and becomes a Buddha, and the disciples that they would have, how many of the disciples and what kind of qualities of those disciples, also what kind of teachings that they would give after attaining full enlightenment. All of such kind of predictions would be bestowed to the practitioners of the great vehicles at various stages. Over here, the prophecy is the prophecy of supreme enlightenment. According to Lotus Sutra, I believe it it was in the 6th chapter, the chapter on bestowing prophecy, where it talks about how all the followers over there, including Devadatta, I think Devadatta's prophecy was in the 6th chapter. Anyhow, all of them received a prediction of enlightenment, and then in the 8th chapter, many of the disciples of the Shravakas and Pradika Buddhas, the Shravakas also received a prediction of enlightenment. I believe Master Huizhao made a commentary where it states that a prophecy, in fact, there are four types of prophecy. There are the ones who receive the prophecy even before making the aspiration, the ones who receive prophecy after making aspiration, and the ones who receive prophecies secretly, and the ones who receive prophecy of the accomplishment of attaining the forbearance of Dharma. In terms of prophecy, for example, there are the teachings saying that there are prophecies of so-and-so master. There are lots of such kind of prophecies recorded in some of the books composed by great masters. Some of those great masters definitely received prophecy in such a way. For example, Pongtsur Rinpoche indeed received the prophecy in such a way. The text was composed a few hundred years back, and then he received the prophecy in a very concise way, and people can see all of the prerequisites being met. And then there are the ones, for example, there are the different types of prophecies made in various ways. But over here, what it means is that the prophecy of the most supreme enlightenment, including how different beings may attain Buddhahood in various lands, and the various numbers and capacities of the disciples that they're going to have, and the various lands that they would take, they would be giving teachings. There are lots of prophecies, for example, prophecies of saying that, oh, this is going to happen in the iron horse year, in the iron dragon year. There are lots of prophecies stated in such a way as well. In mainland, in fact, there are prophecies as well. There are prophecies composed in ancient texts talking about the future ups and downs of a country and the highs and lows of a state, the various things that would happen during certain times. So there are lots of the prophecies in such a way that is recorded as well. Of course, they are not the kind of prophecy of granting supreme enlightenment like the Buddhas. However, there are people, for example, saying that, oh, I received the prophecy from so-and-so book and from so-and-so sutras or shastras because I see my name inside that sutra. And people would get really excited. But this is not necessarily true, because people share the very similar names, sometimes exactly the same names. Maybe you will see your name inside the bodhisattva's name or the prophecy list of gaining or of attaining supreme enlightenment, but maybe you see your name in the exact fashion of recording the name list of Maras as well. Other than that aspect of prophecy, I think there are people who usually like to talk about prophecies, and they really like to talk about this kind of things, and they, under the scrutiny of the Sangha, there are people who do not dare to talk about all of those because it is inappropriate, and there are practitioners, in fact, it would manufacture and it would even try to bluff about themselves and even state that they are of the greatest, and they would Photoshop lotus seat and the various things under their own pictures. And they would Photoshop a golden Dharma throne so that it looks like they are sitting on a golden throne through Photoshop, and they are using such kind of method to deceive the others. There are lots of such kind of photoshopping tools available nowadays online, and people are very good at using them. I really hope that the practitioners, especially, I really hope that the Buddhist practitioners, after noticing such kind of exaggeration on the accomplishment, and even saying that they've received prophecy from so and so, I think as practitioners of Buddhism, we should then try to make things right instead of letting people deceive the others. On the other hand, there are Dharma teachers, the great masters, whose Dharma activity is very different than the prophecies. I think the Dharma practitioners shouldn't slander the ones whom also are genuine Dharma teachers either. In this day and age, we can see that people tend to be very much distracted and do not have much wisdom. So we need to be very careful with our own actions and be aware of what's going on in this world as well. Over here, anyways, it says that then he grants them prophecy of their supreme enlightenment. Do not take this kind of prophecies in a way that to think that they are really easy. Do not think that I've received the prophecy already because I see my name in certain sutras and shastras. It is not as easy as that. Especially, I think, the kind of disciples who are very eloquent at bluffing, it is necessary for for example, the masters, though they're very pure in their actions and in their aspirations, but sometimes their disciples are not very skillful in terms of propagating their teacher or trying to make their teacher known by the others. We need to be very careful with this, and we need to be very skillful with our actions. The ones around the teacher, I really hope the disciples don't exaggerate in terms of their speech by flattering the teacher, by saying that, oh, you're definitely an enlightened one, say your name here and there, you are probably going to fly into the space right away, and so on and so forth. And then maybe as a teacher without much wisdom, or maybe with wisdom and miraculous powers, they would fly into the space, and for the ones without wisdom and without wisdom and miraculous powers, they won't be able to do so, and even probably fall down from the space. On the 29th of October, when Phuntsuk Rinpoche visited Bodh Gaya, he then chanted the aspiration of Mahayana spontaneously, and then another day, in his samadhi, he stated that in the future I am bestowed with this prophecy of radiant auspiciousness, Tathagata, and how many of you would follow me at that time when I attain Buddhahood in such a way. And then not many people were there at the time, but we raised our hand and saying, yes, we will. Not so sure if he spoke of such in a relative way or ultimate way, but that was just a story that I remembered. The next one says that summary of their meaning, and then it has the two aspects as well. So let's look at the three kayas and then the references to the reasons. So what are the three kayas with the reference to the three reasons? Since the three kayas constitute depth, best possible power, and supreme guidance in tune with the aims of the ordinary beings, they should be known in accordance with this number as being deep, vast, and embodiment of greatness. It is deep because it is subtle and difficult to realize. Because Dharmakaya is of great depth and difficult to realize. For such reason, it constitutes depth. And then the second one is on the Shvabhavikakaya. It possesses the best possible power to accomplish the benefit of the others. And the third one is this: he teaches the ordinary beings in a way that is in tune with their wishes and aims. He constitutes supreme guidance in the cycle of existence. Over here, the wishes and aims can be also understood in the various ordinary beings' temperaments and capacity. So those are the three reasons. For the three reasons, we should understand that the three kayas should also be known when referred to in accordance with the number of reasons, as first of all, the deep Shvabhavikakaya and the vast Sambhogakaya and the Nimanakaya embodying greatness. Because it is of great depth, because of the best possible power, and because of the supreme guidance with skillful means, it corresponds to the Shvabhavikakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. So those are the three kayas with reference to the reasons. If you were to ask, why is it, or how is it, why is it divided into the three kayas? Why do we have to understand it in the way of the three kayas? We need to understand that it has the three aspects, that is of the deep Dharmakaya, the deep Shvabhavikakaya, and without such kind of depth, then how could it manifest into the Sambhogakaya that is vast? And the Sambhogakaya has such kind of vast and best possible powers to liberate beings, and then the supreme guidance of skillful means is also needed to liberate the ordinary beings. Therefore, it is taught in the three reasons in accordance to the three kayas. The next one also talks about the two kayas with the reference to the way as they are. Here, the first is the Dharmakaya, and the later as the form kayas, we can see that they are then talked about in the four kayas. In fact, the Dharmakaya is the first, is the primordial. It is of the great profundity and depth. Why do we need to understand the Dharmakaya? Because the most supreme nature comes from Buddha nature, from Buddhakaya, and such kind of Buddhakaya cannot be understood by the ordinary beings. The Shivabhavikakaya can be understood as a Dharmakaya as well, because it is very difficult to realize. And then the later two kayas, these being the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya, these are the form kayas or visible kayas that can be perceived since they appear to the disciples in tune with their respective karmic fortunes.
就是说这个就像我们实践当中的这个什么柱子瓶子等各种各样的色法呢，就是实际上住在这个虚空当中。
Just like how the different vessels can be included in space, without space, none of those can exist. Without the forms or the vessels, for example, vase and bottles and so on and so forth, in fact, we will not be able to have a sense of space either. So previously, as I said, after studying space, the space aspect, I personally had lots of insights about it. Anyhow, over here it talks about how the visible kaya is closely related to Buddhakaya in such a way. I think many people perceive the two kayas in a way that is too simplistic.
是吧？有咳嗽有哭，这样的那个，所以这个发生和那个，色身之间的关系呢，就是《金光明经》当中有啊。
According to the Golden Light Sutra, it says that the true body is the Buddha, just like the true body of the Buddha is the Dharmakaya, that is like the space. It will appear in various ways as the various objects would uphold it, just like how the moon would be reflected in the water. So the visible kayas, in fact, would appear in front of various sentient beings in various ways. If the sentient beings are of the pure capacity, such as the bodhisattvas of the first bhumi and up, they would appear in a pure way. The Dharmakaya would appear in a pure way, that is the Sambhogakaya. And then in front of the ordinary beings, they would appear in the Nirmanakaya and in various ways as well. The Buddhakaya is like the space that is birthless. The Sambhogakaya is like the sun and the moon, that it does not decease. There's a stanza like that. Maybe it's not exactly like this, but I just remember that verse. Anyhow, over here, usually we would use the metaphor or simile, rather, the imagery of the space to correspond with the Buddhakaya, and we would use the rainbow to correspond to Sambhogakaya. So whomsoever we supplicate, the visible kayas, such as the Buddha Shakyamuni's statue and Manjushri and so on and so forth, in fact, by supplicating to all of them, we should understand that the visible kaya is not separated from the Dharmakaya. We should understand that. We've already finished talking about the fifth aspect, which talks about the manifestation, and now we are talking about the sixth aspect of this particular chapter, that is permanence. Over here it talks about the permanence. And then the last question addressed in this chapter is inconceivability, and then we'll finish the second chapter. So in terms of permanence, it talks about the concise explanation and then the reasons and so on. So let's look at the permanence first. Well, permanence, we understand it in a way that yes, Dharmakaya is permanent, but how could visible kayas permanent as well? In terms of permanence, especially talking about the visible kayas, there are 7 reasons corresponding to each of them, and then corresponding to the visible kayas, and then 3 reasons of the permanence of Dharmakaya. Let's look at the verse where it says there is permanence since the causes are endless and sentient beings inexhaustible in number. They have compassion and love, miraculous power, knowledge, and utter bliss. They are masters of all qualities. The demon of death has been vanquished, being not of the essence of the compounded. It is the true protector of all worldly beings. So out of this verse, there are 7 causes, 7 causes to the visible kayas and 3 causes for the Dharmakayas. Let's look at the first one, where it says the cause which consists of the 2 accumulations and so forth are endless. According to Mahaprajnaparamita Shastra, where it says that the Buddha practiced all virtue without exception and practiced all aesthetic without exception. With this kind of qualities, these are the merits of all the Buddhas. So this one corresponded to the first cause, which consists of the 2 accumulations. Because such causes are immeasurable, are endless. Therefore, how could there be the fruition be of limitation? The second reason is that there is no end to exhausting the number of sentient beings to be trained. It is to say that there is a limitless number of sentient beings to be liberated. Therefore, after taking the vow of benefiting the sentient beings, the Buddha vowed not to the Buddha then vowed not to be interrupted or enter into exhaustion. And then the third one says that there are interruptedness through great compassionate love. So with the cause of compassion and the compassion as the uninterrupted cause, therefore it is permanent as well. Unlike the mundane beings, once encountering any kind of obstacles, they would give up. They would give up their vow right away, give up their compassion right away. Give up, for example, giving teachings to the sentient beings. At first, they would generate a great aspiration by saying that I vow to give teachings to the sentient beings, and would never interrupt my teaching. But all of a sudden, with some little bit difficulty, they would give up their vow. And then the next one says that mastery is gained on the support of miraculous powers. Unlike the mundane beings, who do not have miraculous powers would have to, for example, have to give up their activities because of various obstacles that they cannot work with. But the Buddha has miraculous powers, therefore can continuously manifest. And then the next one, there is knowledge seeing the oneness of samsara and nirvana. The Shravakas long for individual liberation as well as the Pratika Buddhas, but the Buddha, knowing that there is in fact the oneness of samsara and nirvana, therefore he is permanent. And the sixth one, that they possess the utter bliss free from any pollution. The dharmas, or all phenomena, is undefiled for the enlightened ones. In fact, they would not perceive all phenomena as polluted. Unlike the mundane beings, in fact, perceive everything as suffering. The enlightened ones perceive everywhere and everything as blissful. People nowadays would think that interpersonal relationship is the most complicated. They would feel that the people are complicated and it's very difficult to get along with the others. They would feel that, oh, this is so difficult, this is so complicated. If you were to complain about the complexity of the others, it really shows that you yourself is a very complicated person and would encounter many unnecessary difficulties with people. Previously, the first 1 to 5 talks about wisdom, talks about compassion, and the sixth and seventh talks about samadhi. So the seventh one says that there are the masters of all qualities or properties. It is that they are not going to be polluted by anything, just like how the sun and the moon are not going to get tinted, nor the lotus flowers not getting tinted in the mud. They, in fact, masters all qualities and properties. And then there are the 3 reasons why Dharmakaya is permanent and unchanging. The first one is because the Buddha has already realized that the nature, therefore eradicated birth and death. So the demon of the Lord of Death has been vanquished. And then the second one, it is not of the essence of whatever is compounded. For that reason, Dharmakaya is permanent. It proves to be the protector and refuge of all worldly beings, because the Dharmakaya is the protector to the sentient beings. It is not that the Dharmakaya can inflict harm and suffering upon the sentient beings. Rather, Dharmakaya, for such reason, the Dharmakaya is permanent. So we can see that visible kaya has the 7 reasons, and the visible kaya has 7 reasons, Dharmakaya has 3 reasons. And then the next verses are more are more concise, and this part goes more explicitly, more detailed explained. I think previously I've already been too detailed. Now this part, how can it be more detailed then? It is just like when you start off by eating a lot, and how can you eat more when the most delicious food comes onto the table? In Tibet, we would say that, in fact, in Tibet, we consider there's this little tiny root fruit that is the most tasty compared to the body. But usually, as a smart host, or as a host who knows the guests, they would first provide barleys, and then when everyone's almost full, they would serve the most delicious one, so that they won't finish eating all the most delicious ones. There are people around me, in fact, they are like such as well. When they get hungry, they would eat everything they can lay their hands on, and then when the most delicious food comes to the table, they're already full. Now the most delicious food are on the table, so let's look at the verses that's given over here as the best part of it. Over here it says that there are 7 reasons why the visible kayas are permanent. Previously we've already learned that the causes are immeasurable. So it talks about how the Buddha has already offered his body, lives, and the hands, arms, even eyes, as well as his status as a king, in order to attain a bodhi. According to Avatamsaka Sutra, where it says that the head, eyes, hands, and feet, and so on and so forth, I have already given them with great generosity for innumerable numbers of kalpas in order to seek for the full enlightenment, that is the bodhi. After planting such kind of causes, then the fruition would naturally be endowed as well. Therefore, the visible kaya will be permanent as well, or be uninterrupted. The second one is because he had already made the great aspiration of bodhicitta to benefit sentient beings. Without the great aspiration of compassion, how could one benefit sentient beings? If you were to make only this kind of aspiration for a short period of time, it would only last for a short period of time. But if you were to make such kind of aspiration for the infinite numbers of times, then it would be permanent as well, uninterrupted. And then the next one is that made the the aspiration of bodhicitta and generated the bodhicitta in order to benefit sentient beings. And the sentient beings are numbering infinitely, and because the sentient beings' numbers are infinite, therefore the visible kaya is infinite, is permanent as well. The second and the third one corresponds to the second cause that's stated previously. And then the fourth one listed over here is that there's the wish to accomplish the benefit of all others, since Buddhahood supremely expressed itself as great compassion. That is pure in karma and mental poisons, and completely pacified from mental poisons, and pure from the veils of hindrances of knowledge as well. So the great compassion that is uninterrupted
然后第5个的话呢，就是他这里讲这个就是神同住视线，
These are the
必住心
these
之故。
are the
意思就是说佛
first
陀的话呢，实际上它具有这个
4
一边深
aspect
度
that
不
talks
变
about
正
the
义， 就各种各样的上
uninterruptedness
边
of
正
the
下下边
compassion.
正
And then
上
the
就是
fifth one
后
talks
边
about
正水
the
等等，就
the
各种各样的
ability
这
to
个
always
我们
stay
说
for
的
the
是
sake
僧
of
净
others.
土
The
或者说
reason
是这个僧祖
is
通的
that they
灯
possess
池，
the
就是
ability
其实这是一
provided
个
by the
灯池，
support
就这种
of
灯池的话呢
miraculous powers.
就完全的是可以注视的。虽然有大悲，但是呢，是不是就是你如果没有这样的这个僧祖通的话，那就是这些
In
自己
fact,
的
such
是没
kind of
办法
miraculous powers
维
are
持
all
自己的生
generated
命。
from
可是佛
samadhi.
陀是有的，
With
就佛陀
this
是
kind of
有的，只不过
samadhi,
先现
one
上
will
呢，
be
有时
able
候佛陀
to
也是这个
manifest and
实现
appear
涅槃的。就是我们那个长阿含经当中讲，当时
appear
这个
in the visible
佛陀
kaya
呢要接
form
近涅槃的时候，佛陀
in
就
an
再三地告诉
uninterrupted
阿难
form,
尊者，就是说
in
是
an
我因为
uninterrupted
有这
way.
个四僧祖通就四僧祖通的缘故呢，
The
我
Buddha
注
said
释一个
that,
大戒的话呢，没有什么问题，已经说了
in
4
fact,
遍，
because of
但
my
是当时罗汉
miraculous
波须呢，
power,
就
I
是
would
把
be able
这
to
个阿
abide
难
in
的
this
这个2
world
遍呢，
for
就是一直给他遮蔽
one
住这种
kalpa,
声音。
but
后来阿难
Ananda
呢就
didn't
没有
hear
听到，
it
没有听到的话呢，
because
线
of
上佛陀
the
呢就
obstacles
是这个
inflicted
实
by
现
the
这个
Mara.
愿景，就是说佛陀的话
Without
呢，就是也
Ananda
是这个，其实
supplicating
高
for
僧大德的传记
the
里面讲的话
longevity
也好，
of
佛
the
陀的
Buddha
话
or
呢，有
requesting
时候
him
现
to
象上
abide
呢，就
in
是
this
他们
world
很
for a
有
whole
色身
kalpa,
世界的。
the
就
Buddha,
我们以
in
前
fact,
也说过，就是上师
complied
净轮寺
to
大师
the
圆寂的话呢，
worldly
也是很奇怪的，
way
就是这
of
么简单的事情，是挺有意思，为什
observing
么
his
就
lifespan
是
to
就
only
是
around
就心
80
光
years
光
of
火一
age.
变，就是哎呀，出家人到处都就跟一个人种地有什么啊？就是这样的话多好，但是现象上是他就好像就实现圆寂。然后
In
佛陀的
fact,
话
the
呢，就是也是
great
好像阿难就
masters,
是不
just
给他
like the
回答的话
Buddha,
呢，就是实
they
现圆
would
寂。
follow
按理来
in
讲，佛陀
such
这个
kind
圆
of
寂也是应该可以。
dependent
但其实
origination.
佛陀也好，阿罗
Whatever
汉
kind
也
of
好，还
causes
这个
and
菩萨也
conditions
好，
that's
很多上师的
created,
话
they
呢，
would
也是到最后可能他要这个
uptake
实
such
现
kind of
什么
actions
这
in
个
order
一
to
种现象
comply
的时
with the
候呢，就
worldly
是
beings'
总是就是有一个理由，但这个
temperament.
理由的话呢，就是
So
可能
over
会
here,
依靠就是比较特殊的因缘来会做，
we
就是这样的。
understood that
然
the
后这是
Buddha,
那
in
个
fact,
就
could
是讲
manifest
到
in
什
the
么呢？就
visible
是他的
kaya
这个僧祖通圆满的缘
in
故
the
呢，
way that
就
is
是住在轮回当中啊，
uninterrupted
就是
and
心自涅槃的话
permanent
呢，就
out of
也
his
没有
miraculous
什么，
powers
就是
that's
属于这个
generated
色
by
身呢，很
samadhi.
长不断。
Of course,
然
this is
后
also influenced
这
by
是第5
the
个，第
various
6个的话
dependent
呢，就是
origination
一至
in
二
how
界
their
或
visible
能
kayas
至
would be displayed in
至二
front
故
of
就是意思就
sentient
是说
beings.
呢，就
And
是
then
因
the
为佛陀有这种
sixth
智慧啊，
one
能够
talks
和涅槃的
about
话呢，不像
the
像那
Buddha
个这个
because
声闻缘觉一
fully
样，就是
endowed
他
by
去除这
wisdom,
个
therefore
寂
he
灭，不
knows
是这样的。
that
他对轮回是没有什么这种厌倦性的啊，就是
there
因为
is
无二无别的，就是如梦如幻
no
的，就是
notion
如
of
梦如幻无二无
abandoning
别的话
and
呢，那
adopting
就是对轮回有什么可怕的？我
with
们
respect
更
to
害怕
samsara
啊！
and
我钻在
nirvana
轮回
because
当
there's
中啊，这
just
些众生太
the
野蛮了，我不想带了，我要去积极涅槃呐。就是其实经常
unlike
看
the
到一些别人的心里马
Shravakas
上就
and
是受不了的话，说明就是他的这
mundane
种智
beings
慧
who
不是
may
问题。如
feel
果真
that
的
there
有能力
is a
无二的
personal,
这种智慧
there's
的
an
话呢，
individual
那就是
liberation
轮
that
回
one
当
can
中的这
attain
些
to
就不会
part
死任何
from
的厌害心。
samsara.
所
The
以
Buddha,
轮
in
回二
fact,
者
sees that
有缘
oneness
故呢，
of
就是
samsara
他
and
佛陀呢
nirvana. Therefore,
就
there's
具足
nothing
这
to
种智慧。
abandon
然后
or
第
adopt.
7个的话
For
呢，就是
such
他
reason,
恒时呢就是具足就是不可思议的这种灯车，而
the,
且这种灯
for
车的
such
话呢，就是
reason,
处于一种
the
非常这个
Dharmakaya
圆满的
is
这个快乐
permanent.
的境界
And
当
then
中，
the
就
second
是他
one
这里恒
says
居无
that
量
they
定啊，就是他是应
Oh,
该
in
这
fact,
个
for such
无有任
reason,
何生灭的就是
the
这样的一种非
the
常这
visible
个
kaya
快乐的
is
这个禅定当中。
permanent.
那么这样的话呢，就是那我们时间当
Because
中的
there's
这种
nothing
痛
to
苦啊，
adopt
时间当
nor
中的烦恼，
abandon. And then the
这
next
些是
one
对他来
says
讲
that
是
they're
这个
not
没有任
harmed.
何的损
They're
害。
not
就是
harmed
所以
since
说
they're
呢，就是
always
色身是
possess
恒
the
常无
best
变的啊，就是
possible
色身
bliss of
色身是
samadhi,
恒常无
which
变
is
的。
inconceivable
然后
and
这是
beyond any
应
end.
该是第6个了，对吧？就是因为现在是第8个的话，刚才
This is the 6th
多了
one,
一
and
个嘛，
then
刚才第
this
1
is
个和
supposed
2 个
to correspond
就
to the
都是为
6th
了就是刚才
reason
那个
previously,
众生者不变的，就是
because
对
the second reason was split into two parts. Therefore, this is the seventh one, which corresponds to the sixth reason from the previous verse. And then the eighth one, that corresponds to the seventh reason in the previous verse. It says that it is impossible for them to be harmed by the faults of samsara for the following reasons. First of all, they act within the world for the sake of others. They are not sullied by worldly phenomena such as karma, mental poison, suffering, and so on and so forth. The mundane beings, in fact, after receiving praises, after receiving various kinds of favorable conditions, they would feel happy, rather feeling quite upset and generate great affliction when they encounter unfavorable conditions. But for the visible kaya, for the Buddha, they are completely untinted by any of those 8 worldly dharmas. We've already studied the 7 or the 8 reasons. Now let's simply talk about the Dharmakaya is permanent. So for the Dharmakaya, it is the same. Let's have this detailed explanation of the 3 reasons. Free from dying, it is the attainment of peace. The Dharmakaya is permanent is because the Buddha has already attained a fully accomplished eradication and realization. Therefore, Therefore, the Buddha does not have any birth and death. For that reason, there is no demon of death. And the second reason is that the Dharmakaya of the Muni has a nature not created by cause and conditions, because the Dharmakaya is uncreated. We've already studied the characteristics of uncreated previously, where it talks about the uncreated does not have any birth, old age, sickness, and death, and does not have any of those characteristics of the condition. In fact, all the characteristics of the conditions have been eradicated, and therefore it is permanent. And then the third reason is that for all those shelterless sentient beings, endless in number, it is the final and ultimate refuge. The nature of the Dharmakaya is to shelter the sentient beings that do not have a refuge. And such kind of nature does not change, therefore it is permanent. So the 3 reasons of the Dharmakaya is stated in such a way. And then the last one, let's talk about the summary of its general meaning. Previously, we've already talked about the permanence and the summary of its general meaning of permanence. The first 7 reasons clarify the permanence of the form kayas, while the later 3 illustrates why the Dharmakaya lasts forever. The limitless number of sentient beings and the limitless number of causes and the 7 reasons that we've studied about the visible kaya and why they are permanent. And then the 3 reasons why the Dharmakaya is permanent, we've already studied the 10 reasons altogether. After studying that, we understand that the Dharmakaya lasts forever. According to the adornment of Mahayana Shastra, where it says that because the nature is forever lasting, the visible kaya is also forever lasting. So we can understand it in such a way. The most important thing to understand over here is that it appears in such a way that the mundane beings are impermanent, and the Nirmanakaya of Buddha is also seems to be impermanent. But after studying this part, we understand that in fact the visible kayas, let it be the Sambhogakaya or Nirmanakaya, and the Dharmakaya are all permanent. This is extremely important for you to remember. Otherwise, for lots of the practitioners understand that Dharmakaya is permanent, but don't understand that visible kaya are also permanent. In front of the sentient beings, the visible kaya do not exist in a way that is moment by moment. However, in the way that the visible kaya exists permanently in a stream, in a way that is in a stream. In the Lotus Sutra, in fact, it talks about how one should abide and manifest, abide in this world and generate great compassion for the sentient beings without tirelessly. And then according to Maharatna Sutra, where it says that by relying upon the power of great compassion, one would be able to endure the viciousness of all kinds of afflictions, but not tainted by birth and death, and not being tired at all. If you do not have this kind of aspiration and feeling that this is too tiresome, and this is too vicious, this is too negative, if you use all this kind of negative words and talking about liberating sentient beings, this would generate that kind of tired mind of yours. But if you were to use all the positive words by saying this is really wondrous, this is just really great, this is the great compassion, this is the most wonderful of all, if you were to use this kind of positive words to describe it, then it would generate such kind of positive mentality towards your compassionate actions as well. If you were to use the negative filter upon your own vision, then everything you see would be negative. If you were to use a very positive lens upon yourself, then you would perceive everything in a wonderful way. Everything that's manifested is really a reflection of your own mind. If you have less defilement and less tints of afflictions, then you would see everything in a pure way. I asked someone to make some noodles for me for dinner, and I said, "Oh, you made a really good noodles." And he said, "Oh, it's only because you're happy. It's because your mind is pure, therefore the taste is pure." Because I usually would say that the noodles that he makes doesn't taste very good. I think he's using a way to say, he's saying that when I don't taste his noodle as delicious, my mind is not pure. So let's end here today.